Well, Dick Irvin has lived hockey as a writer, a broadcaster, a rink raconteur. His latest book is Tough Calls, a collection of stories about the men who officiate the pro game. And Dick joins us now on First Up. Listen, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Rob. Nice to be here.
What is so compelling about officials that it would compel you to write a book about them?
Well, it's funny. It kind of follows a pattern that I've developed with my books. 2 books ago, it was coaches. 1 book ago, it was goaltenders. You know, these are men who are sort of, I don't know, sort of on their own in some ways in a team sport. A coach is there. We concentrate them on the media. The goaltenders certainly think they're an individual playing a team sport. So who else is there out there on the ice that is really in his own little world? And I think the officials fit that category. So I decided to do a book on them. I talked to 25 of them, past and present, all covering all the way from the early 50s to the present time. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. These fellows are a lot different off the ice than what we might suspect watching them from a distance when they're working.
They're very different off the ice, and yet while on the ice, I was thinking about it as I was reading the book. I don't think I could name you 6 NBA officials. I couldn't name 6 NFL officials, yet these names are all so familiar. Why is that?
Well, I think, first of all, they do the games by themselves. I mean, a baseball umpiring crew is a crew, right? And you're doing the home plate duties tonight, and I'm doing it tomorrow night. There's that. Basketball has more than one official. Hockey, I don't know, the referee is the referee. They're the ones who are really well known, especially in today's day and age. Back in the 6-team league, I'm dating myself, but hey, I was there, folks. You know, like Matt Pavlich told me, he used to come to the Montreal Forum 22 times a year. He was part of the furniture at hockey games at the Montreal Forum. He said by the time he finished, and there were so many more teams in the league, he might get there 3-4 times a year if he was lucky. You know, Terry Gregson, it was interesting. He refereed the final World Cup game in Montreal in September of '96. And I talked to Terry in Montreal for the book in February. And he had been at a game in Montreal officiating once in between. So, you know, but the referees are front and center. They're the guy. We don't know who the linesmen are. Perfect example is that I think is the Canadians and the Nordiques had a big fight on Good Friday, 1984. Bruce Hood was the referee. He wrote a book about it. Started his book about his career with that particular incident in that game. But who were the linesmen? Nobody knows. But the linesmen were John D'Amico and Bob Hodges, 2 great linesmen in their day, both retired now, but there they were, and nobody remembers them. And yet I've got their story on one of hockey's biggest brawls from them, because they were out there trying to break up the fight. So, yeah, the referee's very much in the spotlight. He's by himself.
Well, that was one of the interesting things I noticed in the book, was that some of the linesmen claimed not to be referee material. That I found interesting, that they perhaps didn't have the stuff, the wherewithal, the ability to overcome living with their mistakes.
You know, today, these fellows come in as linesmen, and that's what they are. There was a time when a linesman graduated to being a referee, and there were a lot of them, and a lot of the good ones. You think of Art Scove, you think of Ron Wicks. Some of them tried it. John D'Amico is a perfect example. Matt Pavlich is another. And John was very forthright. He's one of the greatest linesmen that this game has ever known. He refereed 21 games in the National Hockey League, and he said, I was man enough to say I can't do it. It wasn't the games that bothered him. He had no trouble doing the game. It was between games. He broke out in a rash. He couldn't sleep. He worried. You have to be a certain type of individual to referee, and there's another type of individual who's a linesman. And once they find their niche, like Ron Asselstein, one of the big surprises I got, and I didn't know this, was he refereed in the WHA, and Gordie Howe struck him in a game, and he quit on the spot.
That's right.
He went right into the dressing room and quit. Bobby Hull was in the game, and he came and talked him out of it. And then he went back to being a linesman for the rest of his career and ended up 25 years in the National Hockey League. So they readily admit that. Some of them just can't handle it.
What they go through is unbelievable. Denny Morrell, you might relate this story, reached a point where one game meant he had to step out.
Yeah, he had a game in Los Angeles between the Oilers and the Kings, and there was it's in the record books for penalties this, penalties that, whatever. It was a massive brawl, and Denny was in trouble for it. Had to fly to Toronto from L.A. to appear at a hearing. The big thing was a punch that Kelly Buchberger threw that broke Thomas Sandstrom's jaw. He didn't see it happen. And he lived with that for a long time, to the point where it affected the way he was working. He never got over it, and it was only in the book, and it was interesting. He said, you know, I've never even told my wife about this, but he felt that hastened his demise as a referee. He's now a supervisor, but he feels that because he wasn't on his game, and it all related back to that night, he lost confidence is what he did, based on what happened, and I guess whatever it was, the league had the rule about whatever he did. Interesting, and it really affected him for the rest of his career.
Well, I have confidence the book is going to do just great. It's an enjoyable read.
Well, thank you, Rob. Appreciate it.
Easy call to have you in. Tough Calls is the name of the book. Great to see you again.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rob. Well, coming up next, your weekly hit of news from the world of daytime drama on trials and tribulations. Well.